and post that we'll have a quiz today. The quiz will be scheduled for 8:45, and you all will get a link at 8:45. So probably within 10-15 minutes you can complete the quiz. Once we are done with the quiz, we'll continue with the rest of the topics for the day. Fine. So we have seen memory, we have discussed about register set, we have discussed data formats, and we stopped at instruction formats in the previous class. And to review again, memory of SIC architecture is 2 power 15, which is 32 kilobytes. Meaning of that is, at any given point of time, SIC architecture can address 32,000 memory locations. That is the idea behind 2 power 15 number of memory locations. Second, register set. To recall, we have 5 registers in SIC, namely accumulator, index register, link register, program counter, and status word. And we know internally we cannot use the A for accumulator, X for index, or L for link. They will be represented in a numerical form, which is an hexadecimal form. The numbering format for that is accumulator is represented by 0, X index register is represented by 1, L link register is represented by 2, PC the program counter is represented by 8, and status word is represented by 9. So why there is a difference of numbers after 0, 1, 2, suddenly 8 and 9? Because this is the architecture dependent and architecture specific. We cannot question that because the designer would have designed with some purpose. So we need to take them as it is. That's what we have to look at. And if you look at the purpose of them, accumulator mainly for the performance of or for the purpose of arithmetic operations, logical operations, or data transfer operations, which is going to be used as a source or destination depending upon the type of instruction we are going to use in the given program. Similarly, we have a X, which is the index register. As the name says, based on the value of X, we can identify what type of addressing we are talking about. If X is equal to 0, it is a direct addressing. If X is equal to 1, it is a index addressing, not indirect. It is a index addressing. Next, L, link register. As the name says, it is mainly used for the subroutines in order to note the return address to return from a called function to calling function. Next, we have a program counter, which is very important in program sequential execution, which always keeps track of the next instruction that we are going to execute in the pipeline of program execution. Next, last one, we had status word. For any program, when you use branching, looping, condition check, we need to use the background data which is stored in the status word or a flag register or a condition code register. All the 3 names are same. They represent the various flags which are going to be changing based on the recently executed instruction. That data will be used while checking the condition. So these are the 5 registers we have in the register set of SIC. Then data formats. Coming to data formats, the data formats of SIC are 2. That is, it supports the character which consumes only 1 byte, while integer is going to consume 3 bytes or 1 word. That's what we have seen. And floating point is not supported by SIC. That we have to remember. Next, we have observed about the instruction formats. Since SIC is a very simple and standard hypothetical computer that we are working, and we need to clearly differentiate between SIC and SIC-XE. So SIC is given with only 1 instruction format whose length is again 1 word, where it is 24 bits, wherein 8 bits are reserved for the opcode, 1 bit is reserved for the X bit. X may be 0 or X may be 1, depending upon the type of addressing we have used, and 15 bits are reserved for the address. This is how the instruction format of SIC architecture has been designed. So with this, let us continue with the other topics of SIC. In continuation, let us look at the addressing modes. As you have seen earlier in the register set, X register is something which is going to identify the type of addressing we have. And recently we have looked at the instruction format as well. X is equal to 0 or X is equal to 1 is going to tell us what type of mode of addressing we have used in the given instruction. Similarly, if the value of X is 0, then we will be using the direct address. If the value of X is equal to 1, we will be using the index address that we have already seen. But what we have to observe and understand here is the last column, the target address. Let me quickly check with you. Do you remember the target address or effective address that you might have discussed under computer organization? If you know, can couple of you can let me know what do you understand by that? May have some inputs from you. What do you mean by either target address or effective address? These names you might have used in computer organization in semester 1. Hope you're all there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you don't respond.
Sir, the address will be located in some register.
Of course, address is located. What do you mean by TA, the target address? Because if you go to next topic of SICXE, you will see so many values under TA. There, I don't want to get confused. No, if better to recall from your CO, you can easily understand what this target address or effective address is all about. Now, heard about this or not? There were 10 to 11 addressing modes, as I said earlier in the previous class: direct addressing, indirect addressing, index addressing, relative with base, base with replacement, base addressing, register addressing, register indirect addressing, auto increment, auto decrement. There was a big table in the book. If you recall the table, the last column was again target address or the effective address. That effective address was precisely, will tell you. If one of you can define me the addressing mode. What do you mean by an addressing mode? How do you define an addressing mode?
It's nothing but a location. It's nothing but a location where the operand is like specified over there.
Correct. So if you want to define formally, yes, addressing mode is nothing but the location of an operand. Addressing mode is nothing but the location of an operand at the time of program execution. Because memory is not in our control. You should be recalling this concept. Memory is totally under the control of your operating system. You and me do not have any control over the memory. What you can do at most is you can create a program, save the program. And when you save the program, where the program is going to be saved is unknown to us. I hope you all agree with me. We never specify, okay, you load my program at this location. You have no right, or you have no flexibility rather, to tell the computer that my program should be located at this particular number or particular location. But when you go to assembly language, we have that. Probably we'll discuss that later. But at this point of time, we do not have any flexibility in informing our operating system or a computer in general that whatever the program or whatever the document I'm creating should be located only at this number, not possible. Then how the system is going to identify? That's why we say memory management is very, very important by operating system. Whatever the program we are going to create or a file we are going to create, that will be stored. And we know the architecture of a file system where every file is attached to a subdirectory. A subdirectory may be a part of a directory. All these places we have a linked list kind of data structure being used in the system. Every time when you ask for a file, that file can be attached or taken using your either absolute path name or a relative path name. Probably you can recall that what we discussed in Unix about the absolute path name and relative path name. So system has a mechanism in order to identify where my file is located. But on the other hand, the user per se, people like us, do not have any control on location at which program can be stored. If that is the case, how the system is going to understand is what we are going to look at here. That is nothing but our target address. And this target address might keep changing from time to time. For example, you have a program today, you have created a bubblesort.c. That bubblesort.c we have loaded today for some purpose in our program. When you execute today, the executable file will also be created that will be stored at some location today. Tomorrow, when again you go for execution, that file may not be in the same location as it was yesterday. It might be loaded into some other memory, especially in the case of a main memory when the program goes for the execution. So every day, the program which you are going to use is going to be located at different location, completely based on the memory available at that point of time. So every day you run a different number of programs, and when you execute a specific program at a given point of time, depending upon the availability of memory, your current program is going to be loaded. So thereby we say that we as the programmers or the users do not have any control over the storage mechanism. We can only say that system will somehow make room for the storing of your program or the document. So given that condition, target address is going to tell, or effective address is going to precisely let us know what is the actual location at which my program or my operand for that matter is going to be stored or available. That is the actual definition behind the addressing mode. So depending upon this addressing mode, if you are using a direct address, whatever as the name says direct, whatever the address you have specified in the instruction, that address is going to be used as the direct location. So direct means the address of the location is directly specified as part of the instruction. That's what, if you look at the last column, target address is equal to location, meaning that I may say my program should be stored at location 8000, because as I said, in assembly language, you have a room to specify, but there is no guarantee the program will be loaded at the same location. Okay, that's what we mean to say. But either way, the user do not have any control over the where the program is going to be loaded. But in assembly language, we have some room to specify, but that may be considered, may not be considered by the operating system in real time. So whatever the location you are specifying as a part of the instruction, if it is a direct address, that address will be considered directly. Or if it is an index address, you just imagine your array concept, where we have a base address. For example, I've declared an integer array of 10 elements. How the addressing will be taken? The base address will be taken. Since integer takes 2 bytes. So if base address is 2000, next value will be at 2000 plus 2. Next value will be 2000 plus 4. Next value will be 2000 plus 6. Next value will be 2000 plus 8. So what is happening here? The base address is constant. Only the plus 2, plus 4, plus 6 is going to change. That plus 2, plus 4, plus 6, plus 8 and so on is nothing but your index. That's what we represent as a X. If you look at the target address for index addressing, TA is equal to LOC. LOC is kept as a constant. That is nothing but your base address plus contents of X. Something that is kept in the square brackets is going to be considered that content of that. What is X here? X is a register. What I want to know, what is the content of X? That value I am going to consider and add it to the target address. If that is the case, index addressing is going to provide me the base address plus the value of index register put together is going to let me know the target address. These are only simple here. When you go to SICXE, you will see 6 to 7 addressing modes. If you have understood this concept here, probably you can learn better about those addressing modes in the SICXE as well. So let me know if you have understood this or if you have any confusion. Able to understand? The concept of target address, the idea behind direct and index mode.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So I stop here now. So probably can go to the quiz, complete the quiz and come back maybe in 10 minutes. So let me know if you all have received a quiz material that was scheduled for 8:45. If you have not received, please let me know. Meanwhile, give your attendance. Asta?
Present,
Abhinav?
Present, sir.
Aishwarya?
Present, sir.
Ambrish?
Yes, sir.
Anu?
Present, sir.
Arbaz?
Present, sir.
Arjun?
Yes, sir.
Ashok? Ashok?
Yes, sir. Present, sir.
Yes. Benita?
Present, sir.
Bhargavi?
Yes, sir.
Bhavisha?
Present, sir.
Chaitra?
Present, sir.
Devamal Chatterjee? Diksha Manjunath?
Present, sir.
Deepika LG?
Present, sir.
Deepika MB?
Present, sir.
Murali Krishna?
Present, sir.
Gangubai?
Present, sir.
First class Gangubai?
No, sir. Second class.
Well, all 3 days were absent only.
No, sir. First day I was present, sir.
Okay, but it was absent. Okay, fine. Guriya Kumari, Harshit,
Present, sir.
Junjar Singh,
Present, sir.
Kavya,
Present, sir.
Kishore,
Present, sir.
Lata,
Yes, sir.
Manisha, Manjunath,
Yes, sir.
Nayana,
Yes, sir.
Nilanjan, Nishant,
Yes, sir.
Pavana, Pavitra,
Present, sir.
Maithili,
Present, sir.
Priyanka,
Present, sir.
Pavan Kumar,
Present, sir.
Akash,
Yes, sir. Present, sir.
Rajeshwari, Rakesh,
Yes, sir.
Ramya,
Present, sir.
Rashmi,
Present, sir.
Ravishankar,
Yes, sir.
Rizwan,
Present, sir.
Vishal, Savita,
Yes, sir.
Shruti,
Present, sir.
Sneha,
Yes, sir.
Spurti. Spurti, you told for Sneha or what?
Sir, present, sir. I was doing the quiz, so sir, present.
Okay. Srinidhi,
Present, sir.
Srinivas, Sunil,
Present, sir.
Vaishnavi,
Present, sir.
Vinny.
Present, sir.
Why your voices are people not active in the morning or what? You should be alert, active. So quiz automatically closes by 9 o'clock.
Sir, Devmalu Sharji, sir. Sir, I am
Pardon?
present.
Pardon?
Devmalu Sharji, sir.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, sir.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Session attendance.
Yeah, I have given.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
It's only 5 questions. Why you are taking so much time?
Done, sir.
So far, 16 have submitted, 17
Done,
submitted.
sir.
Done? Sunil?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Done.
Okay, okay. Last 4 minutes. Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. So we'll resume by 9 because that by then test will be over. I think most of you have completed. So let us resume now. So welcome back to instruction set of SIC architecture. So as we discussed earlier, this is a very simple architecture what we are looking at SIC, as name says, simple instruction computer or simplified instruction set computer. So where we have very, very limited set of instructions available under this, precisely for simple data transfer, precisely for simple arithmetic operations, and for basic or low level comparison type of activities. So to start with, probably we can imagine or remember, hope you have some idea about assembly language, even if you don't have nothing to worry. But these are the middle level English type of phrases or a shorthand notations that will let us know how we can perform instruction. I mean, a particular activity. Let us come back to C language. You might have seen printf, you might have seen scanf, you might have seen various other constructs that will help us to write program. Similar to that, we have certain features of assembly language which will also facilitate us with performance of those values or those activities. So coming to here, some of them which are highlighted here, LDA. As the name says, LDA, load into accumulator. So LDA short form for LD stands for load, A for accumulator. So we are loading some data into the accumulator. Next, STA. Again, A is there. A means accumulator. Store. Store from accumulator, not store into accumulator. So that is opposite. One is a read, one is a write. LDA is writing into the accumulator. STA means reading from the accumulator. So LDX. X is nothing but index register. Same meaning loading into the index register. That means we are writing into the index register. STX, storing from the index register, meaning we are taking some data from index, that is reading data from a index register, like that. Then we have a COMP. As name says, it is going to compare the contents of two registers or two locations depending upon the type of instruction we have. Since SIC supports only one instruction format, it is going to be location or a register depending upon what we have used in the instruction. Second, to perform arithmetic operations, we have simple addition, multiplication, subtraction, division. So ADD for addition, SUB for subtraction, MUL for division, and stuff like that. Probably let me show some of these instructions as we discussed in the previous class as well. This is how your instructions of SIC or SICXE look like. So left hand side we have written ADD, AND, COMP, DIV, J, JEQ. So don't look at others now which are there in black at this point of time because they are not under the SIC. The simple words like ADD, COMP, DIV, J, like that, these are going to be part of our SIC architecture because SIC architecture is very, very simple in setup and it cannot handle various type of other complexities as far as instructions are concerned. But here we have listed in general the type of instructions that are available in both SIC or SICXE. This is just to give an idea how an instruction look like. Probably in the next class, I will show you the actual appendix of SIC and SICXE as part of our discussion, which we require for writing the programs. But otherwise, you just keep in mind now at this point of time, SIC being a simple architecture, it is having very few set of instructions that support the basic activities or basic computations in a programming of a SIC architecture. That's what we have to keep in mind now. So next we have the last part, that is input and output, how they are going to be handled by SIC architecture. So any computer, as we discussed in the previous class, has 4 block boxes: input, memory, processor, and output. So we have taken input now. We have seen how memory is there, how processor is going to handle. Now how output is going to be looked at. Now output in SIC is taken care 1 byte at a time because character represents 1 byte in SIC. In the same way, SIC supports the input and output as well in only 1 byte at a time. That means if you want to transfer 1 byte of data, yes, we have instructions in SIC. How about if you want to transfer more than a byte? So if you want to transfer more than a byte, we have to repeat these instructions in a loop. For example, I want transfer a byte of data, sorry, a 10 bytes of data. If that is the case, what I should be writing? I should write a loop structure like a for loop in assembly language of SIC, where I have to perform these three instructions. What are they? TD, RD, WD. TD, RD, WD. This is how the set of instructions are there. As name says, TD is for testing the device. Read data, that is read the data. WD for write the data. What do you mean by test the device? For example, I have connected a printer for my computer and I want to transfer 10 bytes data from my computer to the printer. Suppose printer is off or printer is not ready. Probably I will touch upon about the architecture of a single bus later, but right now the printer is not available. So you are transferring the data, but the other hand, output device is not ready to receive the data, or you are not able to take the data from the device, whatever the case may be. If that is the case, with only one side the data transfer is possible, the other side the data transfer is either receiving or sending is not available because the device is not ready, maybe switched off or there is no power supply, whatever the reason, or it is not connected to the system. So what we have to do now, every time when you transfer the data from one device to another device, we need to check whether the device is free or not. That is one way of looking at why we have to test the device. Second important thing what we should be knowing from the IT perspective is, you might have seen a bus structure in our computer organization. A bus is nothing but a connecting mechanism between multiple peripherals of a computer. For example, we have seen input, we have memory, we have processor, we have output. These are the major peripherals what we have in a computer. These are four peripherals are connected through a bus structure. If you take a single bus structure, wherein single bus structure concept is at a time only two of these, either input and memory or input and processor, or memory and processor, or memory and output, or output and processor, any two of these four entities or four items or components can be connected. More than two components you cannot connect in a single bus structure. That is a limitation. We have a single bus structure, but today all computers are multi-bus structure, wherein at a time multiple transfers are going to happen because we are talking about a parallel processing. Today our computers do not have any issue, but since we are taking an SIC, which is an hypothetical computer, here it is assumed that single bus structure is used while connecting the more than one component. That means two components at a time, they can be accommodated. So that means when a printer is already engaged or your output device is already engaged for some activity and I am parallelly sending one more data to printer, obviously printer is busy. It is not free. If that is the case, we need to check whether that device is ready to accept or ready to send the data. That is the reason why we have the concept of a test the device. So test the device means here now whether the device is free. Free means is it already engaged with some other activity, or it is free to receive the data, or it is free to send the data. That perspective we have to test the device. So testing device is nothing but how whether the device is ready to accept or write the data into some other forms. That we will test. If it is free, then we can either read or write depending upon whatever the data you want. So read the data. Please understand what do you mean by read data here. So we have connected something to the device and we are reading from the device so that we can store in some other place. Similarly, what do you mean by writing the data? You are going to write some data from location to your device. So this is how we have to see from the device perspective. So this is how the input output is considered at SIC. To sum up here, input output always carries a single byte at a time in SIC. If at all you want to perform more than one byte, we have to transfer. Then we have to have a group of these three instructions kept in a loop. So repeatedly we have to execute these three instructions so that we can transfer more than one byte of data. So what are these instructions? There are three: TD, test device; RD, read the device, right? So read the data, and WD, and write into the data. So to the device. These are the three instructions what we have under the SIC mission architecture as far as the IO is concerned or input output is concerned. So this is about the mission architecture. In the examination, they might ask you discuss the mission architecture of SIC. In general, they will ask you for 10 marks, let us say. What you should be answering now? You should talk about the memory. You should talk about the registers. You should talk about the addressing modes. You should talk about data formats, you should talk about instruction formats. This minimum 5 are required. In addition, if you write probably this input, output, or the instruction set, it is going to be good. But all the 7 are going to be part of our mission architecture of SIC. So, may I have any clarifications required in this part? Because if you understand SIC XC is easy to understand. Otherwise, difficult to understand. That's the reason why let us spend some more time if you're still finding any issue here. So, can any one of you let me know whether you had any doubt or you need some clarification till now? Maybe memory, registers, addressing modes, data formats, instruction formats, instruction set, and input output. Any doubts? We have some inputs. Do they have doubts or don't have? Any quick responses?
No, sir.
No doubt?
No, sir.
If you have no doubts, I will ask some questions. Manjunath?
Sir?
No doubts?
No, sir.
So how was the quiz, by the by?
Yes, sir. Good.
Anybody got 5 out of 5? Or most of you got?
Me only.
Oh, good. So no confusion then. If you answered and got 5, at least then you understood what we discussed yesterday. And today's was a simple continuation of further to SIC. So fine. If we don't have any doubts, so I will continue further. Yes. So since we have discussed about SIC in full now, we will be going next level into SIC XC architecture. So hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So we have seen SIC now, and we know there are 2 architectures and SIC family. One is SIC SIC simple version and SIC XE, which stands for extended equipment or extra equipment. So SIC and SIC XE are upward compatible. So what do you mean by this? SIC and SIC XE are upward compatible. So can you, some of you throw some light on this? What do you mean by upward compatible? Any inputs? Advanced, of course, advanced. When I say SIC and SIC XE are upward compatible, what do you understand by this? You should always think from IT perspective. Don't look from a layman perspective. You are a designer, you are a programmer. Think from those points of view.
Which can be upgraded in the future if we want to.
Upgraded? Eh? No. See, architecture is created. See, once you have a Pentium 3, that's it. There is no Pentium 3 advanced version. It may be Pentium 4, but I will not call Pentium 3A, Pentium 3B. Not possible. So if that way, SIC is design means designed over. SIC XE design means design. Fine. Now between these two, we are telling SIC and SIC XE are upward compatible, meaning that you know that SIC is say 2000 born, SIC XE is 2005 born, meaning that SIC is the simple version, whereas SIC XE is an advanced version. Advanced is always something some year later only. So, but architectures are different. SIC architecture, which was designed in 2000, let us say, it is existing, it is unique. What is advanced version of this, that is called SIC XE? It is also independent, unique, it is existing on its own. There is no relation as such, we are not talking about that. But when I say SIC and SIC XE are upward compatible, what do you mean by that from an IT perspective? No more additions now. Addition is already added. Any idea? Let me take Java. You all know Java, no? Yeah. You see some language, for example, Java 1.0, Java 2.0, Java 3.0, let us say. When I say Java 1.0, Java 2.0, what change you see from a programmer perspective?
Extra features can be added.
Yeah, you agree, no? Similar to that, SIC, SICXE is advanced version, more features are there. You all agree with that now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, from writing a program perspective, I've written a program in Java 1.0. Can I execute that program in Java 2.0?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, obviously.
Obviously, good. Now I have written a program in Java 2.0. Can I execute in Java 1.0?
Yes.
Not all. Some of the programs we can execute, some of we can't.
Some of the programs which are common.
Yes.
So, for example, you have written some Java 2.0, which was there already in Java 1.0, is as good as Java 1.0. Agree?
Sir.
Yeah. Now, this is the concept of a upward compatibility. That means the program I have written in Java 1.0 can be easily executed in its advanced versions, like Java 2.0, Java 3.0, 4.0, whatever it is. Or your HTML code written in 1.0 can be executed in 5.0, let us say. Then I can say upward compatibility, meaning that when there is advancement on the technology, advancement of the architecture, advancement in the programming language, the low-level program can be always executed in the higher versions, simply because your higher versions are replica of a low-level program plus some additions. So that is concept of a upward compatibility. In software or architecture, there is always upward compatibility only possible. Downward compatibility is 99.9% is not possible, simply because you cannot bring a higher end program to a smaller end program and start executing. It cannot work at all. It is not possible. Practically, it is impossible. That is the reason why we say upward compatible. It needless to say, but to understand the programs that what you write in SIC can also be executed in SIC XE, whereas vice versa. I've written some program in SIC XE, I cannot execute them in SIC unless, as some of you said, some commonality is there. Otherwise, I cannot always say SIC XE program can be executed in SIC. It is impossible. Why? Because it is not a downward compatible, and hence we say that SIC and SIC XE are always upward compatible. In general, any computer architecture or any programming language for that matter that is existing today are always upward compatible. So far, none of us could identify a downward compatible program or architecture because it is not required at all. That is the process. That's what we have to understand, the meaning behind the upward compatibility. So having said that, let us repeat all our 7 points. That is memory, registers, data formats, instruction formats, addressing modes, instruction set, and IO for SIC XE. Now, let us consider memory of SIC XE. If you go back to SIC, so remember SIC, then compare that with SIC XE so that you will not have any confusion. So can anybody tell me memory of SIC? What all we discussed?
There are two power 15 bytes in a computer memory.
Okay, 2 power 15 was the memory in SIC. So what you are saying in SIC XE now?
1 MB.
2 power 20.
2 power 20. Will you accept that SIC XE is a advanced version of SIC?
Yes, sir.
Because we see some difference. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Except that remaining 3 are same. SIC was also memory having byte addressability. SIC XE also byte addressability. No difference. In SIC, one word was 3 bytes. Even in SIC XE, one word is 3 bytes. SIC was Little Indian assignment. Again here, SIC XE is also Little Indian assignment. The only difference is the bandwidth, the number of addresses, the length of memory is changing. That itself is a big difference compared to SIC and SIC XE. So SIC had 2 power 15. 2 power 15 means 32,000, 32K. What is 2 power 20 here now?
1 MB, sir.
What is the meaning of 2 power 20 in terms of K, M, G, P, T, Z? Kilobyte, megabyte, terabyte, petabyte, zettabyte. What is the 2 power 20?
MB, sir.
How many MBs?
1 MB.
Exactly 1 MB. Because 2 power 10 is 1K, 2 power 20 is 1 M, 2 power 30 is 1 G. So that is why 2 power 20 is equal to exactly 1 mega. So by changing 5 bits, which was 32 kilo, has become 1 mega. That is what the exponential power of 2 here now. It may be 5 bits, it may be 5 lines of address you have added, but 2 power 15 is was just 32,000, whereas 2 power 20 increase of 5 has given room for the 1 mega. That is 10 power 6 total number of addresses possible in the memory of a SIC XE. That is the first difference between SIC XE and SIC memory. Others are going to be quite same. Memory is byte addressable. What is equal to 3 bytes? It also follows Little Indian assignment, but memory size is very huge, meaning that memory can house up to 2 power 20 at a given point of time. Second, at a given time, I can address so many locations, that is 2 power 20, 1 mega locations I can consider or address at a given point of time. That is the advantage of SIC XE. Thereby we say SIC XE is an advanced version of SIC. Next, let us see the register set. So this is what the register set we have seen in SIC. So SIC XE, since it is a upward compatible or it is a higher version of SIC, whatever there in SIC, they are all available in SIC XE. So meaning that your accumulator, index register, link register, program counter, status word, all those 5 are available in SIC. Then what else? If it is same, then we will not say it is SIC XE. In addition to that, SIC XE has 4 more registers. In addition to SIC, that is 5, we have 4 more registers in SIC XE. Now, how do you compare now? SIC has 5 registers, whereas SIC XE is having how many now? How many registers in SIC XE now?
9.
5 plus 4, 9. Very good. There are 9 registers in SIC XE. Tomorrow when somebody asks you, explain the registers of SIC XE, what you should be writing? You should write about those 5, A, X, L, PC, SW. In addition to that, you have to add these 4. What are they? Base register, general purpose register 2, that is SNT, floating point register F. There are 4 registers that are added in SIC XE in addition to A, X, L, PC, SW. Which are these 4 now? B for base register, SNT for general purpose, and F for floating point representation. Now look at the numbers. The numbers of previous 5 are 0, 1, 2, 8, 9. The remaining fill up the blanks are here now. 3, 4, 5, 6. But one is missing 7. We don't know why it is not taken. It is up to the designer, but this is how they have been given. So there are total 9 registers whose number will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There is no 7. It is 8 and 9. So you should remember them properly. So A, X, L, PC, SW, whose numbers are 0, 1, 2, 8, 9. Next we have a BSTF, whose numbers are 3, 4, 5, 6. This is this architecture. Tomorrow if you study some other architecture, it will be different. So you should not have any confusion. When I have studied SIC, the accumulator was given 0. In Intel, accumulator is given 5. So what is this confusion? There is no confusion at all. Each architecture is unique. The designer of that architecture would have given any number. That's why we say that when you study architecture, it is going to consume a lot of time, because everything we have to start from the beginning. You cannot say that I have studied previous architecture, so here only a simple brush up will do. No, not possible. we have to take the data right from the down, that right from the scratch, what you say in loose words. If that is the case, we have to understand the complete architecture from the beginning. So one architecture will definitely differ from the other architecture, and no data might be common, may be common, but need not be common. That's what we have to understand. So coming to SICXC, we have 9 registers now: accumulator, index register, link register, program counter, status word, base register, floating point registers, and 2 general purpose register. What do you mean by general purpose register? So when you say base register, we have base addressing possible, and base register is mainly used for the purpose of base addressing. When you look at the floating point register, as the name says, it is going to support the floating point values. But how about SNT, the general purpose? Meaning that you can use them the way you want. They're like a trump cards in your or maybe wild cards in your games. If that is the case, you can use them for arithmetic operation, temporary storage, or data storage. You can use them the way you want. Whereas accumulator, X, L, PC, SW, B, F, you cannot use as they want or as you want. You have to use them as they are specified for a given purpose. Whereas SNT, there is no restriction. You can use them for any purpose. That is the concept of a general purpose registers, S and T. So any confusion till this point? We'll wind up with the data formats quickly. If you don't have confusion, I will continue with the data formats. So again, before we go to data formats of SICXC, let us recall the data formats of SIC. So can any one of you let me know what are the data formats of SIC?
Character, integers.
That's all. So there is no floating point, is it? So floating point was not supported by SIC. I think in quiz also with the same intention I asked that question, whether you know the concept of data formats. So if you are all done, it's good. That means floating point is not supported in SIC. Whereas in SICXC, floating point is supported. Just now we have seen there is a register by name F. As name says, it is a floating point register, and hence we can easily say data formats will be given with floating point in SICXC. So in addition to what we have in SIC, that is a character 1 byte, integer 3 bytes, that is 1 word, we have a floating point which is going to have 2 words or a 6 bytes or a 48 bits. A 48-bit floating point is possible in SICXC. So let me stop at this point with respect to SICXC for this class. The remaining will continue in the next class. Okay. Fine. So thank you. If you have any doubts, we can discuss quickly or we can wind up otherwise.